Welcome back. It's been a few weeks since I did a video, went away on holiday to Tenerife, so just getting back in the swing of things over the last few days. So wanted to start this weekend's video with a look through the Watchlist stocks before getting onto the regular content. So starting with a few of the more liquid recent IPOs to begin with. So CRCL looking quite interesting at the moment. It had an initial IPO stage 2 advance running up on the daily chart here. You can see it's pulled back in slightly here, so if we use the ATR levels and not even got any ATR levels yet. So if we actually flick through to the lower time frame, we drop down to a 30-minute chart, so an intraday chart here. You can see obviously the initial stage 2 run up, had a little stage 3, dropped into 4, and now I've been going sideways in stage 1. So we do start to see a pop up through this area here. So I've marked it as the top of the range here at the moment, so the 19250, but you could be using the top here 194 or the close from that 19282. So basically anywhere in this sort of 19250 to 195 area, we start to see a move through here. Ideally you want to see some heavy volume on that kind of move, so relative to what it normally gets here, it's more than its average, more than 3 times average on a intraday ideally. So something big like 5 to 6 million there on the 30-minute chart. So if we get a pop up for like that would be a potential stage 2 breakout attempt. We'd be looking for it to grind higher back in the range again. So coming back to the daily chart with that again, so we'll be looking for a run up back up towards that 300 level where it topped out recently, if that was the case, which big percentage move in this case. So it's a 55 to 58% move in that regard. So again, coming back to the lower time frame, one of the ways we use stage analysis is when we're looking for a pullback entry point. You can drop down to a lower time frame. So I normally start with a 195-minute time frame, and if that hasn't got enough data developed, you drop down further into a 2 hours. So you can see that the stage 2, 3, minor, 4, and rolling. So on this, we would be a pop back through the same area. So it looks a little bit like it would need a bigger move on that one to actually get back to a stage 2 on the 2 hour, and you can go to a 1 hour and a 30-minute, etc. So just basically get down to the lower levels, the intraday area where you can see the structures, where you can see the stages, and then look for your potential entry points. This especially on these high ADR stocks, where they have big daily ranges and average 2 range. So you can see from here, if we get a move up through the stage 2 level there, the bottom of the range, you've still got a 12% range just on that from these last few days on this. So it's a big mover on a daily basis, and quite a big range for a 30-minute chart. Obviously when you drop down on lower ATR stocks onto intraday charts, you can get much tighter entry points. So hence with this kind of stock, you also be looking for areas like this where you're in the latter part of stage 1, you're in the upper part of the structure, and it's tightening up as you can get much tighter risk profiles. So you can obviously get a near-term stop in here, drop down even further to lower intraday time frames. You don't necessarily have to wait for the breakout. For me, this is the preferred entry zone with stage analysis. When you start getting the breakout, you're often a little bit extended and it makes risk harder to manage. So it's actually easier to use the Wyckoff entry points in phase C and phase D of a structure and start using partial entries and gradually building your entry in, as you can obviously then have entries the way up, and then as it starts to break out, and then your average entry price will be around the stage 2 breakout point. Anyway, I digress. Next stock, CRWV, another one of the recent IPOs that's been very liquid. You can see 10 million stocks traded on and shares traded on Friday when it was a quiet day for it. So it's had some huge days through here as it ran up into stage 2 initially, so quickly broke out, ran up, massive stage 2 advance. So you can see through this area from the low to the high here, ran 450+%. So the pullback's been relatively minor in that regard, has dropped back towards its 21-day moving average, so less than 20% on the pullback here, and now sitting just under that +1 ATR level. So this is the plus 1 ATR level from the 21-day exponential moving average. So I'll just quickly draw that in for those of you that can't see. So when it's above that, we say it's in a short-term uptrend. Below that, but still above the minus 1 ATR level, we're in that neutral range between the 21-day and the plus 1 and minus 1 levels. So this is our sort of neutral accumulation zone. So we look for breaks back through that, pullbacks back into the range as potential sort of entry areas. So it's right on the cusp of one at the moment. Obviously you can also use Wyckoff Springs, which in this case I will show you. We highlighted that last week when I got back from holiday. So just notice if we take away that last day's price action, so that was Friday's price action. So it was sitting here, you're at the bottom of the range structure. So you've got your classic Wyckoff moves, you've got selling climax, automatic rally, secondary testing, we've got some up thrusting, more up thrusting, then it came back down to the range, attempted an initial spring, rolled back down again and was sitting below. So at this point here, you can see these tight bars that it had on the 30-minute near the end of the day here. So although this is an intraday chart, these structures happen on multiple time frames throughout the day, so you need to look around for them, especially, as I say, on the pullbacks. When you've had a decent run in the stock, then you're looking for a pullback entry, then a Wyckoff Spring or the breakout area or any part of what we call phase C and D of the structure is interesting. So from a Wyckoff Spring perspective, at the close on Thursday, it was right at this point here, we'd had three really tight bars. The volume, if you note down here, had dropped off, and this final part of the structure here, you can see the volume was significantly higher through this part of the structure. So it had calmed down as it had rolled off. So it was showing some absorption there, not much in the way of supply as it pushed lower and attempted to break down and then settled there. So what I said, it was in position for a potential spring. This was the opening bar on Friday, and then once it started to pop through there, it started to move. So your spring entry point is when it comes back up through the range there, the bottom of the bar, so where the selling climax level was. So that's your potential phase C spring entry point, and then you've got various phase D entry points as it starts to run up into the latter part of the structure there. So had an 8.85% move on Friday from the spring, and with finishing off the day with a sign of strength bar there as well. So closing near the top of the range, obviously quite a big move for a single day, so it wouldn't be out of character to then consolidate and go sideways for a little bit here. So if it can pull back in here, potentially we could get a sign of strength move out of here and start to see it roll up. So looking for something along those lines. Come back to the daily on this. So you can see on the daily, as we said, we're just in that position at the plus 1 ATR level. So it gets back above that, then we could potentially be looking for a continuation, start to see this push up towards the highs again and test that level. So at that level, obviously potential for supply to come in, as it's obviously the first major top of this. So that's potentially be a place for the test at that point, and then we'll see if it can follow through or not. But if it doesn't, and we start to see a break back down to the downside here on the lower part of the structure, then obviously a 50-day moving average test could be next on the cards if that was the case. But at the moment, looking for that spring to follow through and for it to test the highs. Okay, next up, wanted to talk about RBRK. So this one had a particularly strong move off of the April lows. So you can see the pause day on the tariffs. It quickly ran up higher and made a gap above its 50-day moving average, and then ran with very consistent price action for multiple days. Again, it's got this plus 1 ATR level here that it was above the entire time until this point here on this day where it started to move back below that. But look how tight these bars are the entire way up. So it looked like persistent accumulation from some automated trades, so institutional accumulation through there, and then the pullback has been fairly steady. We had this initial reaction where it shook out, but then has got fairly settled in terms of where it's got to now. So we've had a small moving average undercut and rally here, so it's spring at this point. You can see there's a significant bar from last Wednesday here. Was it that was it Tuesday because it was closed on Friday. So from Tuesday, and then so that's our potential level at the moment on the daily chart. But we come through to a lower time frame, you can see that a little bit more clearly. So this bar here is your significant bar in the near term. So we start to get a move through there, then that's a potential near-term entry point with this one. You can see the pattern with this. So as it's gone down, so we've got a pattern of lower lows, but it had an initial thrust down, but you've got a shortening of the thrust here, gradually rolling round, and we've had this shakeout move into a potential spring. So as I said, if we start to push up through here, then this is a potential entry zone with this one. You can also see a potential double bottom pattern on this. So if you're going for a bigger area, somewhere up in the 93 area for a double bottom entry point on that one. So if you come back to the daily, see that would be up in around this area. So 92.76 is the 1 ATR level at the moment, so that would be a good area for that if you go for the double bottom entry point in that regard. But as I said, the lower entry point here, this significant bar, would be what I'd be interested in personally with this one.